Hello and welcome once again to Superconnectivity. I'm your host, Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is...
Phil me and Parrish.
Hey, Phil, great to have you. So, now last week I mentioned this, and once again we have it, which is the Friday night news upload. Not really a news dump, because they're not hiding it. They're letting us know, hey, talk about this on your podcast over the weekend, kids. Because we know that's how all you nerds talk nowadays. We got super big news this week. What news would you like to talk about first, Phil?
You want to talk about the Thor stuff first? Because that's the first thing I saw.
That's why I'm tossing it to you, man. You are the skipper to my Gilligan. I follow your lead on all of the things we do, my friend. So yes, let's talk Thor. So we have got some amazing casting for Thor. The most amazing, in my opinion, is Jeff Goldblum, Mr. Frost himself, playing what role?
I don't know if I saw his name on there, but I don't know if I saw which part he was playing.
Phil, then give me a moment. Okay, take a deep breath. Are you ready?
Yes.
The most awesome role I thought would have been for this man, the Vulture. I thought, him as the Vulture, that's going to be awesome, because I thought they were talking to him about Spider-Man. But he said, no, I'm talking to Marvel. I wouldn't have thought it was about Spider-Man, because that came out right after the whole other thing with Marvel. But no, his role is going to be the Grand Master.
Oh yeah, I did see that. Yes.
That's Elder of the Universe numero dos that we have seen so far. The second best, the second nerdiest of the Elders of the Universe, after the Collector, is the guy who's the hardcore gamer, the Grand Master. Who's got to collect everything, and then you've got the guy who's just really good at the games. Yes, roll them bones. The Grand Master will be played by Jeff Goldblum, which is, here's what I'm going to say. It is very different casting than you normally have for the Grand Master. When you've had the Grand Master in most other productions, we've seen him in some cartoon versions and things like that. He's always very uptight. He is always very, very Spockish, if you will. Mm-hmm. And although Jeff Goldblum plays genius characters, he's always a little more fun with it. And I think it's going to be a really great new take on the Grand Master that is going to be so exciting to see. So for me, that's the most interesting news about Thor Ragnarok is that we will have a Grand Master, which means this is so all about the Infinity War. And that their take on the Grand Master is going to be something that is going to be a new and different way to interpret the character. As I've always said about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, what makes it great is that they take things that we know inside and out and still surprise us. When I do the Gamma Cast, I've mentioned a few times how the origins of the Marvel Cinematic Universe start in The Incredible Hulk. Because in The Incredible Hulk, they really did throw out the books, but still somehow managed to give adequate homage to the books enough that it became a classic. That it wound up informing the books, informing the way that people saw the characters in the books based on how they described it in the old 1970s and 80s Incredible Hulk series. And I do see that continued on to this day on a much grander level, where they're going to drive you to the edge, and you think you know what's going to happen, and then they just completely turn the corner, and you're like, oh, I did not see that happening. And it as I've said, it speaks to what Marvel understands both about storytelling in movies, which is that you have to keep things familiar enough that people want to go see it, but you also can't be so familiar that they know what's going to happen. People have to be spoiled. People have to be able to be spoiled. You can't do like Game of Thrones, where if you read the book, you know what's going to happen. You've got to be able to play with the ideas. And of course, now that Game of Thrones is writing their own stories, I think they're doing their own things and maybe even doing stuff a little better, because they don't feel as obligated to tie themselves to the stories. Although I think that when they broke away from the stories in Game of Thrones, likewise, it got better, because it was this idea that now you really don't know what's going to happen. Now you got to ride along for the first time in a world that you're really familiar with. And I think that is what the Marvel Cinematic Universe understands about making these properties real, that I think other people maybe miss, is that it's not about just repeating the same thing. It's about rhyming. It's the old saying is that, history doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. That's what a good story is. It doesn't repeat what you already know, but it does rhyme. So that you get this idea of where you're going, and then when the turn happens, you are extra surprised because you really thought you were going left, and then you went right, or then you went up instead of right or left, and then it's like, whoa, I didn't even see that coming. So that is pretty amazing to me. Also in this, we know that now we're going to have Hela. The Norse goddess of death will be in here, which is going to be a very interesting take on the story, because last movie, Freya died a hero's death. So we know that she is in Valhalla. The Valkyrie is also going to be in this film as well, which will cause no end of complaints from various people who are suddenly concerned about artistic integrity in the comics, that it will be an African, actually I don't know if she's African American, African Canadian, or African European woman, or just African woman, but I think she's actually probably African American actress, who will be playing Valkyrie. Which is fine. It's already established that there are multiple ethnicities in Asgard. And actually, even in the comics, they even made Sigurd dark-skinned, which, cool by me. He had a thing with Valkyrie, and he's a bit of a dog, so it did not end well. So I'd love to see if they get Sigurd in there. That would, actually, I'll tell you what. They're talking about Boyega possibly getting a role in a Marvel movie, and now that's been squelched because they were saying he might be doing Black Panther. I tell you what, if they cast him as Sigurd, the first hero, that would be awesome. It would so make so many people mad, except that would be exactly like it is in the comic book, because he is black in the comic. It's like, I got you. I got you, you little nerd. I got you. You want to say you're not racist? You're a little bit racist. Anyway, so that's cool. But no, with having Hela and Valkyrie, who are so tied to the mystical aspects of Norse culture and this idea of death, and it's going to be a question: are we going to see that there is this afterlife in among the Asgardians? Is there an Asgardian afterlife, and what is there? Are we going to enter into that realm? It's going to be very interesting. It's going to be great to see how they do it. It's going to be great to see how they dance that around the Chinese censors. Although, obviously, Doctor Strange comes first. So if they can establish if they can get it past the Chinese censors with Doctor Strange, they can probably keep on building on their own space quantum mysticism, which will be interesting. We do have the Executioner in there, which is, a good villain. We don't have an Enchantress, which is a little disappointing to me. Although, well, let me put it this way. We don't have someone cast as the Enchantress yet. But to me, it's kind of weird seeing Scourge without the Enchantress. How do you feel about that, Phil?
Yeah, it is a little weird because they were like a package deal back in the day. But you think... Do you think we're gonna get an Enchantress? They just haven't. I don't know if they haven't cast her yet, or if they just haven't announced it yet. I wonder if it's like a big name they're holding.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could be, it's always hard to tell because again, they do play with with our expectations. So, and for what it's worth, they have had the Executioner twice in the cartoons, and not actually had him with the Enchantress yet. He hasn't been. They haven't actually had the Enchantress in the cartoons. Of course, I guess having a character who is who is basically a sex goddess, figuratively and literally, might be a little tough sell on the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon. But still, it is interesting that we have had Scourge a couple times, but still have not had an Enchantress. I do always think of those two together. I do think that there is a really interesting story of exploitive and unrequited love in a reversed fashion. We're going to be getting, of course, obviously DC's tripling down on Harley Quinn right now. And of course, Harley Quinn's got her own exploitive relationship storyline that's going to be explored in Suicide Squad and possibly future stories as well. But it would be interesting to see that take place there. Of course, then again, you have the old, we have to give every story adequate time, which is, and that, and for what we'll say, Marvel does overstuff its films, but they do give at least, here's what I'll say is if you're a comic book nerd, you get enough story. I can see how if you were walking in, sometimes these stories might seem a little light for people. But I think if you know the material, that they make sure that you get enough story to understand where everyone's coming from. But yeah, so Thor Ragnarok, we've got this great cast. It's it's interesting. It's an interesting question because, of course, Marvel is dealing with the diversity issue right now, and this idea of because there's still that flag out there about the Ancient One being Tilda Swinton, and now they have this African American female in the Valkyrie role, and hopefully that will be a really interesting role. And hopefully she and Sif will get to talk about something other than a man for 5 minutes, and that'll be great. We'll pass the Bechdel test, and hopefully she'll have her own arc, and that'll pass the the Savoy test. When she talks to Heimdall, because you have to talk. That's this other test, is that you have to have two African American characters speak to each other for 5 minutes about an issue other than race. And you almost had it in Civil War, but the scene didn't last 5 full minutes between, I think it was Rhodey and Falcon, or War Machine and Falcon. And why isn't he not Iron Patriot anymore? They did that for one thing, and then they went back to War Machine. I don't know. I still think the name Iron Patriot's a cool name. I really wish they'd do more of it. Although I still say Iron Man 4 should be Rhodey as Iron Man. But that's a whole other bag of things. But I can just see the poster with the red and gold armor but the face mask is up, and it's Don Cheadle there. And it's Iron Man 4. This time it's Rhodey. I really want to see that.
The search for Tony Stark.
Well, no. You have Tony there, and he'll be in the pepper pot spot with the digital clipboard thing, because he'll still be, because they're still going to pay for Robert Downey Jr. It's just that we're not going to put him in the Iron Man armor until the final battle where he has to put the armor back on. But the whole plot line will be that he promised Pepper. Because that was the whole arc there, is that if he wants Pepper, he has to stop being Iron Man. And the arc is going to be Pepper and Tony's relationship as, Rhodey is Iron Man, doing the Iron Man avenging thing. And he's the last dang Avenger in town. It's just like him and Vision fighting everything. And it's like, Tony, it would be good if you didn't like alienate the entire superhero community. That me and Vision are the only people fighting Skrulls right now. Because that's where it's going, and so that's that plot line, and then your subplot line is, so that's your action plot line, is Rhodey and Vision, and Rhodey's dealing with it, and it's a lot of stress, and he realizes the burden of really being the one superhero, and realizes this is what Tony was going through for the first couple of years before all the other superheroes showed up, where he was the one man on the wall. And you have a nice little story with Vision and him, and maybe Rhodey and Falcon are talking because they are like the two African American superheroes that have sort of like, maybe they're maybe there's something, maybe we'll get something, and so yeah, but that's your ideas. You have Falcon and the Vision, or not Falcon, and so you have Rhodey and the Vision. Rhodey is the Iron Man. Tony has given up the Iron Man, but he's still doing support. He's doing Avengers support. He's like directing the team. Maybe the director of Hammer or Shield or whatever's in place at that point. And then you can do an Iron Man 5 and 6 still with Rhodey, because Rhodey's going to come to terms with it, and Rhodey's going to be Iron Man. Because I want Rhodey to be Iron Man for a while, just because that shows the growth in the character. And Tony, if he wants to have what he wants, he has to give it up. Although maybe at the end of it, what you get is that, Pepper realizes why Tony has to be Iron Man. And, maybe you have Peter Parker swing in and make that basic statement that if you can do something and you don't and people die, then it's your fault, and maybe that helps Pepper come to her growth. And maybe the arc is then Pepper's arc. Pepper is coming to terms with, I'm in the crazy world now, and I love the people in the crazy world, and I understand what the people in the crazy world do. And I'm going to help them get there, because I do understand that it's important. And then you have a great arc for Pepper. You have a nice, Rhodey, Don Cheadle character becoming the Iron Man. You have Tony Stark sort of finding a work-life balance, because, of course, that's something no Stark had ever had in their entire life, was a work-life balance. And then you end it with a nice big wedding between Pepper and Tony, and then Stan Lee can't get into the wedding. That's his cameo. It's like, Stan Lee, I'm on the list. I tell you, I'm on the list.
Or like maybe they already did that with Fantastic Four.
Well, yeah, you're redoing it, but make it better is the idea.
Well, I was going to say, what if Stan Lee is like the drunken uncle giving the toast?
Little Pepper, I remember when Pepper was knee-high to a grasshopper. Yeah, that'd be good too. Excelsior. Oh, yeah. Man, not to bring it down, but man, I live in the New York City area. I got to get to New York City Comic Con. That's probably going to be my last chance to see and maybe even meet Stan Lee. And I know it's going to cost me like $200 to get the go see and get Stan Lee's autograph and get a picture with him. I want to do it. I got to figure out how I buy that, because I don't think I'm going to become a world famous director in time to produce my own Marvel movie and get Stan Lee to be on set so I can do it for free. So I think I'm going to have to pay the money to see him. And I know this is going to be my last chance. And that everyone is thinking about that. Every director right now, I guarantee you, is thinking, will I be the last guy who does a Stan Lee cameo? And probably they're going to, and I'll tell you what, that'll be Stan Lee's joke. He's going to get more and more lines in every succeeding movie, deeper and more poignant lines as it goes, because everyone's like, this could be the last Stan, and I want to give Stan Lee that moment. And so, Stan Lee giving a toast at Pepper and Tony's wedding would be awesome. Giving some words of wisdom. I'm sure he's going to be playing the janitor at Peter's school, and I bet you he has at least a 2-minute scene giving advice to young Peter Parker in Homecoming. I guarantee you that. Because everybody, and like, not for nothing, nobody wants the guy to pass away, but everyone knows And man, 2016, this is like the worst year. This is the worst year to be a celebrity. Another one of the original Beastie Boys just died this week. And it's like, come on. Really? A Beastie Boy you're taking now? Guy was 52. And it's like, yeah, no, that's not even appropriate. 2016, not good.
It's been so bad, maybe 2017, nobody will die.
Yeah, well, that's I think it's like Stanley makes it 2007. He's like, you fools, I'm immortal. I got that infinity formula. I'm good. Excelsior. Here's fingers crossed that Stanley got a hold of the infinity formula. But moving right along. Okay, so that's Ragnarok. That's Stanley. That's Iron Man 4, which isn't anywhere in the works yet. But that's my Marvel. That pitch is for free, though I will write it for you as well if you want. Okay, that's your pitch. Rhodey is Iron Man because Tony wants to be with Pepper, and that's the only way that he can be with Pepper. But of course, the stress gets to Rhodey, and at the end, because of the villain, who is... Give me a good villain, Phil.
Do we bring back some...
It's the term.
I was going to say, do we bring back some form of the Mandarin?
We could. I don't know what they want to do with Mandarin. Hey, Fin Fang Foom. There we go. It's a Fin Fang Foom attack. Yeah, we'll work on the villain, but we need, but whatever it is, and actually, honestly, I kind of want to make it, heck with it. I'm gonna call it. We're gonna put Vincent D'Onofrio in there. Vincent D'Onofrio, the kingpin of crime, has gotten all his metahuman army together because he is gonna take the world by storm.
Did you see that? I don't know if
it's
yes.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You say, yeah, I did see it, but yes, tell us what we both saw, Phil.
Well, was that confirmed, or was that just a rumor? They're talking about Vincent D'Onofrio and Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Here's my statement on that, and that actually leads to something else I want to talk about. Okay, it has been suggested, and I get the feeling this is nerdery headcanon, sort of what I do every episode. I would like it if they had Vincent D'Onofrio be a villain in the new Spider-Man film. And yes, that would be awesome. We all agree. But the only way that's going to happen, the only way that will happen is if Disney steps in and taps Ike Perlmutter on the shoulder and say, it's not your night, Ike. It's not your night. And say, you got to step down. Feige's going to run the live action. Let the Marvel be Marvel, but let's not let you be Marvel. And no, I'm sorry, man. That's where we got to be now. I see these change.org petitions because some genius in Silicon Valley said, what if we just created a platform where people could make meaningless petitions about anything they dang well pleased? And we could make $1 billion because it'd be like, okay, yeah, here you go. Here's paper. Write your petition. Except it's electronics paper, which is fancier and takes less time to sign, meaning that it actually means less than if it was actual, real, physical paper that you went out and had people sign. Think about that, kids. Convenience means not as valuable. But yeah, so with all these, Netflix should do Agent Carter. Netflix should do this. It's like, you want to do a change.org petition that's going to have value. Create a change.org petition that says Disney should make Marvel Television under Feige the same way that Marvel Studios, which should include the television, should be outside of Marvel Entertainment and should report directly to Disney. Because then we're going to have our reconnections. Because right now we have our universes, but they're being kept separate. And of course, Chloe Bennett went on a bit of a rant this not too long ago at Wizard World about this. Because someone said, "Hey, will Quake be in? Why was Quake not in Avengers and or not in Civil War?" And it's like, and Chloe basically said, "You know what? Ask the movie guys. Ask the movie guys why they didn't do that, because we acknowledge their universe, they do not acknowledge our universe, and we don't know why that is. We're just doing our job." And people got bitchy at Chloe Bennett because she's a female and dared speak. Women aren't supposed to speak because this is still the nerdiverse, and we don't allow the female gender to have opinions. But I agree with her. As a man, I agree with her, and so I'm going to legitimize her opinions right now. No, the problem is like Perlmutter, and Chloe Bennett is dang honest about this. The Black Widow film, which we're working on, should have her team up with Mockingbird or Melinda May. These agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. should know each other and work with each other and honestly get into pissing contest. I would love to see a 3-way pissing match between Melinda May and metaphorical. May. I'm not into that. Although I'm sure there are other people that are like, "Oh, no, you had me right at the statement." Between Melinda May, Mockingbird, and Black Widow, and Melinda May has to win because she's the only one that isn't so self-conscious that she has to have a freaking code name. It's like, no, I'm Melinda May. They want to call her the Cavalry, and she says, "No, I'm Melinda May. I don't have a code name. I'm not Mockingbird. I'm not Black Widow. I am just who I am, and I am here to eat nuts and kick butts, as it were." and that would be great for me. You have to make sure that it doesn't wind up being the Melinda May film, but still, a Black Widow film with Melinda May and Mockingbird would be pretty dang awesome. With Carol Danvers as the Beaver, that would be great. Or as Captain Marvel, with Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel. That would be great. But you're not going to get that. Even a Black Widow Mockingbird team up isn't going to happen until Feige is sitting there saying, "Okay, let's look at what we have. Let's look at who we have." Because it's not like anyone's going to say, "Oh no, Meng Na Wah isn't a good enough actress for film." It's like, no, she is. Adrian Palicki isn't a good enough actress to be in the movies. Yes, she absolutely is. Every single one of these characters are absolutely adequate and perfect to at least have mentions or scenes in the film. And if the only person who, and I'm going to say this honestly, I don't know who built the wall. I don't know if Ike Perlmutter is building the wall saying, "My TV people can't go to the movies," or the movie people are saying, we're going to build the wall because we don't want to actually have to look at Ike Perlmutter. And so we're not going to let the TV people in because we don't want to have to talk to that guy. Very telling as a point in this that Agent Carter isn't in Civil War. That we don't even get one scene with Haley Atwell. When she's on, because at that point, this is the film where we're making the break, and Haley Atwell's on the other side of the universe. She's on the other side of the wall at the incursion. She's in that other part of the world, and so when they made the break, I'm sorry, Haley, you didn't make it over. You weren't here when that happened, and so we can't bring you in, which is sad and painful and horrible. But, it's life. And, the only way that gets fixed is if Ike Perlmutter is no longer in charge of television. If it no longer has to go through him and we can actually get a universe that is what the original promise was, which was the connected universe, that's when we can move forward. So whoever it is who does change.org petitions, that's your next petition. Don't take Agent Carter to Netflix. Don't take Marvel's Most Wanted to Netflix. Make it take Ike Perlmutter off of Marvel TV. have Marvel TV be a subdivision of Marvel Studios under Kevin Feige, there can still be some other guy under Kevin Feige who's doing all the hard work. I'm sure Kevin Feige, he's just one man. He's got enough with the movies. But when we allow the flow back and forth, that's going to get us back to what made Marvel great. Which is that super connected universe between TV shows and movies, and that drives interest in the TV shows and back to the movies and then back to the TV shows. Because as it is, after Civil War, we had this big break because that's when, Ike that's when they first told Ike it wasn't your night. And now I believe that Disney is sitting there saying, we're watching. And like I've said before, I think the cancellation of Agents and Marvel was the first volley. That was them saying, that was that ABC giving Disney the excuse to go up to Ike and tap him on the shoulder and say, hey, Ike, you lost us 2 gigs. It's not your night. We're moving forward with Cloak and Dagger. We're moving forward with Marvel's Most Wanted. We're moving forward with all these properties that have things that you have been hurting us on. And not for nothing, we just made $1 billion on Captain America when we kicked you off. We want to expand that outside of you, And speaking of the $1 billion, Phil, 2 weeks in, not yet the third week, Captain America is already at $1 billion. And in the entire time that Batman v Superman was out, like $840 million. Basically, one more blockbuster film than Batman v Superman has been made by Captain America. Those cash registers tell you that Disney knows what it's doing. Feige knows what he's doing. As it turns out, I was suspicious. I was worried, but he knows what he's doing. And and on that level, apparently that he's got some extra money in his pocket, and that extra money brought someone back to the table this week.
Oh, the former Batman, Michael Keaton himself.
Yes, Michael Keaton. He was not into it. He said, "Yeah, we're not quite where we want to be." He walked away. Suddenly, Captain America made $1 billion, and then phone calls get made again and say, Mike, I know you want a little more than we wanted to pay. Let's talk about what it is you want.
Do you think it's a negotiation tactic though too? Maybe they threw him a number, he didn't like it, so he says, "No, I'm not interested," and then maybe they come back to him a couple weeks later with a higher number, and he says, "Okay, let's talk."
Well, let me put it to you this way. I think that is partially. I think they gave him a number. He walked away, and I think they were okay with him walking away at that number. But now they've got a little bit more money. It's like when you find that 20 in your pocket you didn't know you had. Originally you were just going to go to McDonald's, but now it's maybe I'm going to go to the diner for my lunch this week. Maybe I'm going to get that bacon cheeseburger with the curly fries at the fancy place and give a tip to the lady. Because
Disney found an extra $1 billion in their pocket. So
yeah, they were like, "Hey, we already, we knew this was going to make money, but it made a little bit more than we thought, and so, an extra $1 million to sweeten the pot to get to bring in Michael Keaton into the fold, so long as he doesn't die at the end of the episode of the movie, I'll be happy, Now there was the other bit of news, is it has been, quote unquote, leaked. I don't know if it's really leaked. Our villains in the Spider-Man film are going to be, as was suggested, the Vulture. And did you see who the other villain was?
No.
The Tinkerer. And I'm going to give you a little bit of an interesting thought on this as well. A weird bit of history that has never properly been resolved was what the heck the Tinkerer is. Do you know what I'm referring to here?
Are you talking Amazing Spider-Man number 2?
Well, I thought that was Peter Parker. No, not Amazing Spider-Man number 2. The Vulture. No, I'm talking about Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man number something that I can't remember, though I do own it, which was the first appearance of the Tinkerer. Do you remember the first? I don't know if you know this. Well, okay. So the first appearance of the Tinkerer is there's these aliens that hold the stick up, right, and fly away in their flying saucer.
Uh-huh.
Now, it's later revealed that the alien faces are rubber masks, but there's a real ambiguity as to whether or not the Tinkerer is actually human. He looks human, but we do know that there's a lot of aliens who look human.
You know
or
what?
Alien.
I can clear this up a little bit. I don't know if this is still canon or not, but like around 1999, 2000, when John Byrne was like writing some Spider-Man, he came out with Year One, and he kind of dealt with this, and he kind of dealt with what those aliens were. And like I said, I don't know if this is still canon or not, but because he rewrote a little bits and pieces of Spider-Man's origin, like the accident with the radioactive spider was when at that same time when Otto Octavius was showing off his arms and but what he showed, it was the aliens, they were fake, they were wearing rubber masks, they were humans, but they were, and I think one of them was Mysterio. It was so it was all like a big Mysterio special effect.
Well, that's interesting. Although, so let me give you this idea again. Of course, and this is the thing: we know that Marvel doesn't always follow the books, and that's what that they use it as the jumping off point. They say this is what they take the heart of the character that we love, and then tell us a story that we haven't heard before. As opposed to telling us every story we've heard 100 times already in a DC film. You're not getting away from Batman v Superman until you actually make a good Suicide Squad, and we don't have a lot of faith in you, DC. That's a whole thing. I was, Comic Book Girl 19 was talking about this this week, which is that basically, DC is saying, Affleck's doing this, and Jeff Johns is now in charge of that, and Robbie, Margaret Robbie, that's her name?
Yeah, Margot Robbie, yeah.
Yeah, Robbie, whatever. She's going to produce her own Harley Quinn film before even Harley Quinn is out, before we even know if Suicide Squad is good. They're making all these promises, and it just smacks of desperation. It's like, make one good film and build from there. You can have missteps along the way. Incredible Hulk was not the best film, Thor 2, people had problems with it. Every film, there's going to be things that people are going to say, well, that wasn't quite what I wanted. But you start out with one good film, one film that you can really say, this is our moment. This is our greatness, and we can build from there. But DC doesn't want to do the work. They just want to have it happen. And again, what I'll tell you is that, you know what their strongest property is?
What?
The Flash.
Yes.
Think about it. The Flash has had 2 hit television series so far. Now, Superman has had a couple hits, and Batman's done good. Although they didn't build off of Batman. That was like the weirdest thing. It's like, okay, so we have this really popular Batman movie series, but we're just going to end it, and we're not going to have that be a jumping off point for anything. I don't even know how that was a thought process there. It's like, no, he only wants to make 3 films. It's like, okay, aren't you the studio? It's like, aren't you the guys who's like, yeah, I understand you only want to make 3 films, but let's establish a universe where, Batman exists within a universe, and then we can do other things. I'm not saying you have to write a Superman film, whoever that guy was. But, it's like, allow for the universe to exist here, And of course, that third one was just awful anyway. So, quite frankly, maybe burning that pile of whatever is worth it there too. You know. I tell you that's your biggest problem with DC books. Your origins can be great, but once you actually start to think too hard about these characters, it all falls apart. It's like, honestly, I'd say that the only ones that really make any sense are Superman and Wonder Woman because they are so alien, and so they don't actually have to have a mortal existence. But Batman has this mortal existence. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it. And I'm sure there are people that are going to defend their own perspectives on it, certainly. But I will say this. DC needs to slow their roll and see what happens with Suicide Squad. And honestly, my biggest worry about Suicide Squad is that they went too far in the other direction when they tried to make it more humorous, when they did all the reshoots. I think that probably the original Suicide Squad was probably pretty dang good. I get this feeling that what they had was good, and that had they just let it be good, it would have been fine. But they panicked, and they got the flop sweats, and they, there's a rule in comedy. Which is what I always say is don't go to no comic does this because every comic goes to their pants almost immediately because it's a cheap, easy laugh, But I was always told when I was a comics is don't play blue because you don't play the big rooms if you play blue. You can have blue material and you can do blue material, but you got to be able to drop the blue at a moment's notice and still do a solid set. If your set requires you to be blue, you're never going to play the big rooms. Now, granted, I've never played the big rooms. My set was as family friendly as anything, as anything that was, centered around the idea of crack addiction. Yeah, it was a different time. Not me, other people, but But that's this idea, and and I've said this before about DC. I think that because they had Batman and Superman, Batman and Superman are essentially your pants jokes, your jokes in the pants that are always good. People are going to just turn out for it. You don't have to have you don't necessarily have to have a good joke for people to just show up for it because there's such iconic characters, and so if you don't have to work to get $840 million, why bother? I guess is the argument to be made. And along the lines of letting artists do what artists do and telling Zack Snyder, yeah, sure, go ahead. Sexually violate Batman in prison. That's fine. You've heard about that, right? What Zack Snyder said about doing Batman?
I don't think I want to know.
Oh, yeah. It was, I don't even know the exact context, but he was basically saying, yeah, you're not going to, yeah, basically he said that in his film, you don't know what's going to happen. And he would totally sexually violate Batman in his movie because he could do that in his film. It's like, yeah, you know what? You've already spiritually violated these characters. Please leave their bodily integrity, please. But that's why he's sort of been unceremoniously kicked off of everything, which is what we've gotten between Affleck and Roby and Jeff Johns. These are the people who've been put in charge of everything. Jeff Johns, I think, is actually probably the smartest move they've made so far because he actually knows comic books at least. I don't know if he knows movies, but then the other two theoretically know movies. That's what I'll say. Like between Ben Affleck and Margot Robbie and Jeff Johns, you probably have like one Kevin Feige in the mix, and so maybe they can actually do this okay. We'll have to see in what happens after Wonder Woman and Suicide Squad. Although I do think Wonder Woman's going to be okay, and I think Suicide Squad is going to be fine. Neither one of these needed to be their $1 billion film. Neither one of those needed to be the Avengers. Batman v Superman needed to be the freaking Avengers, and it wasn't. And, that's the truth of it,
Well, I've told you my theory before, right? I think, well, especially now that it was so successful, they want in the movies and the comics, they want Harley Quinn to be their Deadpool.
Well, yeah, everyone. Well, although that's an interesting thing about Harley Quinn, again from Comic Book Girl 19, how she doesn't mind Harley Quinn, but that basically when she, in Comic Book Girl 19, she is of the feminine persuasion, and when she was a girl growing up, the superhero or the super character that women wanted to be was Catwoman. Because Catwoman was self-possessed, she was strong, she was her own person. Yes. She wasn't bound to Batman. She would work with Batman, but she was never Batman's girlfriend. If anything, Batman was Catwoman's boyfriend. That she was and Harley Quinn's story is the literal opposite. She is this person who threw her life away to chase after an abusive man, who, yes, she in recent times has risen above, and maybe we're going to get her rising above that in Suicide Squad, but you still have a woman whose entire life is defined by her counter relationship with this abusive man in her life. So Harley Quinn, she's super popular because she is DC's Deadpool, because DC doesn't have the guts to just make Ambush Bug be their Deadpool and be a Deadpool that rises above Deadpool, be a non-violent Deadpool, who can do everything that Deadpool does, but doesn't necessarily need to just be a sociopathic murderer. Although, of course, I guess maybe if you want to comment on sociopathic murderiness of comic books, I guess you do want a sociopath in there. But I do think that you can actually have a character who goes beyond, who can have that self-awareness in a way that moves beyond it. Or you can even do a Squirrel Girl character who can have that self-awareness, but again embodies the nobility and the positiveness of comic book characters, not their negativity. Harley Quinn is a great reimagining of Deadpool, but Deadpool was 1990s technology. Comic books have evolved way beyond what that original Deadpool concept was, and if you're trying to chase that Deadpool, you're already too far. You're already two steps behind. Because now we're already at Squirrel Girl and Ms. Marvel and other books that can be self-referential and still find superheroism, and and we still and Marvel still has their ultra-violent original flavor, and now we've got Gwenpool, who is an entirely different take on that ultra-violent sociopathology. Because it is a literal interpretation of sociopathology as a being who sees humanity as fictional. That you don't exist other than just to be a prop in my story. And then, of course, having her deal with, it's like so many other different levels on it that exist out there. But DC doesn't want to take risks, because DC doesn't have to take risks because they have icons. If you have the icon, you don't need to take risks because you have the icon. And Marvel never really having the icons in the same way that DC did. Even though I think there is some argument that actually Namor actually predates Superman, though I'm not 100% certain of that. Namor did come out in 1938, so if he came out, I think he came out almost concurrent with Superman. Or was Superman in 1932? I don't think Superman was. I don't think.
No, he was 38.
Yeah, so they both came out in 1938. Exactly who came first, I don't know, but obviously both as superheroes came to existence, and of course it's that classic telling his tale is that Superman is a superhero fully formed. Namor is a guy who is a guy dealing with stuff. He's a guy dealing with the oppressiveness of white people, which is an interesting thing, and colonialism, and rape and murder, and really heavy stuff in his own right. Even though it's done in the motion picture, it's funny format. Really dark books for stuff that was given away for free to kids. But then again, there were wars on and people were murdering each other left and right. So, world used to be a much more violent place,
Yeah.
People forget that. World War I, bit of a downer. A bit of a downer, World War I. Spoiler. And again, I it never ceases to give me a weird, twisted smile to remember that, that the guy who was assassinated by the terrorists that started World War I, those are the guys on whose side we were fighting. That Franz Ferdinand was the Germans, and then we were in those guys that killed him and started the war. We're with those guys. But of course, it wasn't us. It was just that, they had a treaty with that guy, who had a treaty with that guy, who had a treaty with England, and then we were on England's side, so we all got drawn in. War.
What was it good for?
Absolutely nothing, as it turns out. Well, actually, unless you're Henry Ford, then it's worth a lot of money, What's it good for? It's good. It's good for a retirement plan. That's what I tell you. But anyway, getting back to Marvel Comics, because I know there was something. Let's see. Did Thor Ragnarok? Oh, freaking Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. final episode. Okay. So have you watched that yet, Phil?
Yes, I did. Remember, I told you I liked the ending.
Oh yeah. Well, okay. So, are you ready for Chaz's crazy fan theory of the week?
Let's do it.
Okay. So, the whole 2 hours, don't worry too much about. It was a great story. Everyone had great moments. It comes to a fantastic emotional arc. We do that thing where we're almost replicating the Captain America Peggy Carter scene from the end of First Avenger. It's beautiful. Everyone saw it. It was fantastic. But we get an after credit scene. First off, we got Quake now is a rogue agent. Is to the point where people were saying, well, is really Daisy the fallen agent because she's the agent who fell? We see that Phil Coulson, he's no longer wearing a suit. He's in clearly a different thing, which makes me wonder if he's no longer even in S.H.I.E.L.D., that the director is the director of Hammer or something else. Now, I'm still fingers crossed May is the director, but we'll see who winds up being the director. Because he says we have to talk to the director when he's with Mac. But the last scene, we have Dr. Radcliffe with his AI Ada, who is being turned into an LMD. So where do we go with this? Now, the obvious thought is, we're going to do an Age of Ultron rift. We're going to have these LMDs. But let me go you one better, because there's a little bit with Ada that sharp-eyed readers caught, which is that Ada is actually a character from the Marvel Universe, from Squadron Supreme. And here's my crazy fan theory for what is going to be in next season. Now, remember, coming off of Civil War, we do have Rhodey and Vision left as superheroes, and maybe Tony. Mm-hmm. But really, we are superhero light. And we also hear Radcliffe talking about how people died, but maybe they didn't have to. Now, Radcliffe is a character in the Marvel Universe, too, and he was very much into this idea of having sort of, instead of people fighting wars, having these robotic warriors, so that you didn't have to send people into battle. So he creates the LMDs with Ada, who is a Squadron Supreme character. What if Radcliffe recreates his own Squadron Supreme of LMDs? Ada will be Power Princess. And here's the fun thing. He can model them off of anyone, which means he can have If he wants to, he can bring back Xena Warrior Princess to be Power Princess, which would be awesome. If we see, mark your words, Rob, because you might get. I'm blanking on Xena's actual name all of a sudden.
Lucy Lawless.
You could get Lucy Lawless back because they might make her Power Princess as Ada. You have to look who did the voice of Ada, who did that robot voice, because that's going to be important. They could bring back her as Power Princess, and then here's the thing: you could bring back Agent Triplet as Nighthawk. You could, because originally I was thinking, you could bring back Ward as Nighthawk. Because you could use that Ward structure, because he's just building them off of the bodies. I need a body to do. Here's some things I have. It would be fun to use Ward. As he's goofing off in his lab creating LMDs. It's not Ward. It's going to be whoever. But then I was thinking, because I'm reading the new Nighthawk now, and of course he's a bald-headed African American guy. And I said, you know what? Didn't we lose a bald-headed African American guy not too long ago? And you could bring back Triplet as Nighthawk, because he's going to have all of the specs on all of the biometric specs on Triplet. Bring him back. You could bring back Ward. You could make him the Wizard, or you could just make him Taskmaster. You could just straight up make him Taskmaster. As these superheroes he's going to create. And you could have Ward, you could have and there are the Squadron Supreme, because you need to have these superhumans that can do all the things that superhumans can, but that are inherently replaceable, rebuildable. And then, of course, what you have is the basic Squadron Supreme problem, which is that these things are smarter, faster, better than humans or Inhumans. And what happens when they get a little tired of dying? And that could be your arc for next season. So that is my mark my words, but probably wrong, crazy fan theory for next season, that you're going to have a Squadron Supreme. Because of course they can only use B-rate characters, but if you wanted a B-rate character who was actually pretty awesome, you go to the Squadron Supreme. And they've introduced the idea of the Squadron with Ada, and then we could just build out our own LMD Squadron Supreme. And wouldn't that be awesome? I don't know if they're going to go as far as to have a Hyperion, although maybe that's a great place to put Grant Ward, make him Marcus Milton. You're going to have to make him a ginger. You're going to have to dye your hair red, Brett Dalton. But he could make a good Hyperion. That might even be a kind of cool thing, to make Ward the Hyperion, so that now he's got this super intense moral code of good guyness. That would be weird, but might maybe kind of cool, I don't know if they're going to be able to fit the cost of a Hyperion into the story. And, you could also have them in the gaudy superhero costumes, because, of course, they are superheroes, and they're meant to be superheroes. So you can dress them however you want to be the Squadron Supreme. Sort of like, when they did the Justice League thing, where they had like the Super Friends pastiches, and they've just really designed them to be superheroes. So I think that there's a lot of potential there. I would love if they explore that. I mean, short of doing a Jocasta and an Ultron line, which has already been done, which I don't think they're going to do. I mean, to me, that's the most logical thing, is to create. If you're dealing with superhumans, if you now have a dearth of superhumans because the Sokovia Accords made everybody go nuts, and all the superhumans you had kind of jumped ship, because let's face it, Black Widow jumped ship, Cap's team in total jumped ship. Like I say, you've got Vision and Rhodey and Tony, who's all melancholy and costs too much to do anyway, The logical idea is, what if we built our own superhumans? Because an LMD can be as strong and as fast as you need them to be. You could just design them to do that. And of course, Radcliffe, he's all about body modification. So you're doing that bioorganic creation that has these enhancements built in. That would be awesome. And it lets you get Ward back. It lets you get Triplet back.
Yes.
And how much have we missed Triplet? He won't be Triplet, but it'll be that actor, and he'll get to be some other version. And you even have like Triplet maybe then. Like I said, if you make Ward the Hyperion and Triplet the Nighthawk, you could have him being like the super devious guy, which would be fun, because you got to switch it up. But that's my crazy fan theory. What do you think, Phil?
Oh, I like it. I don't know if they're gonna do it, but I wish they would.
Yeah, well, that's how I feel too. I have no idea if they're actually going to do any of this stuff, but I think that would be like their best option. You're going to go into this. You're going, and it's like it's so perfectly set up because basically, like I said, otherwise all they have is the retelling of Ultron. I mean, you could do the story of her, which is basically the Adam Warlock story, but we already know that Adam Warlock was already hinted at in Guardians of the Galaxy. So they're not going to let him or her be as a part of this. You can do Jocasta, but Jocasta was already hinted at in Avengers because that was one of the other AIs that Tony had. So you can't do that story. So you're just stuck with this idea of the life model decoy. Now, what might be an interesting secondary take in this? Because they have the life model decoy, and they say this was a plan that was mothballed. But there is another character already introduced into the Marvel Cinematic Universe that could go from the movies to the TV shows that would be the basis of the life model decoys. You know who I'm referring to here?
No, who?
The original Human Torch.
Oh, yes.
Because he was in that one scene in First Avenger. Mm-hmm. And you could bring him back. You could even do a great little back, historical scene with him and Agent Carter. Because we can still put Agent Carter in anything. And they've said this. This is the thing that Jed Whedon and I forget the other woman's name, who are the showrunners. They basically said, and this is why I think they'll actually bring Ward back, because they were like, yeah, we killed Ward, but we really love Brett Dalton, And everyone seems to really love Brett Dalton, and like everyone on the cast loves Brett Dalton. He seems, and hey, Brett Dalton talked to us on Enough Said, so we all love Brett Dalton too here in the Enough Said universe. So we would love to see more Brett Dalton, and I think Brett Dalton as Taskmaster, which you can do as an LMD, as Hyperion as an LMD, as the Wizard. Actually, I kind of think that having him be the Wizard might be fun, because then you have him as sort of like Brett Dalton playing the Flash. As this kind of like hyper, super fast, there's a lot of, different takes on that character that he could do, Mm-hmm. And like I said, I see no reason not to bring Brett Dalton back for another season, because he's a fun actor, and to have him be like a different character every time he comes back, I think it just becomes this great trope of the whole thing. If you can just churn out Brett Daltons on the LMD assembly line, I think it's pretty cool. You could even do a really cool thing with Brett Dalton as sort of a, when they do the Clone Wars bit. Where, of course, all on the cartoon, the Clone Wars, there's one actor who does all the voices of the clones, mm-hmm. but he does each clone with their own personality. Mm-hmm. And you could have this thing where you have like 6 different Brett Daltons in the room as the LMD warriors, So that's sure you have all the Brett Daltons as the LMD warriors, but each one has their own slightly different take, and that would be a lot of fun too. There's a lot of things they can do with this now that they have this, and I would love to see them expand it and grow it and build it. And I think that's the future of this. And if we can get Jed Whedon put as the head of Marvel TV, maybe, have reporting to Kevin Feige as the head of Marvel Studios, that might be a good thing in the long run. Somebody create that petition at change.org. Okay, we need that. We need, don't say someone take up Agent Carter. Say, Disney, throw your weight around, put Ike in the corner. Tell Ike it's not his night. He did great. And I'm going to say this, Ike Perlmutter did great things for Marvel. Anyone who says Ike Perlmutter did not save Marvel is just lying to themselves.
Okay.
You know, they're lying to themselves about where Marvel was and where it became when Ike Perlmutter got there. He saved that company. He built that company. He made it what it is. But at a certain point, sometimes the old line guard needs to step aside and make room for new ideas and new thoughts so that we can continue to grow and expand and continue to be greater. Okay, I hear the clock. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. No, I just hit that by accident.
It's like, okay, Charlie, wrap it up. Okay, and I think at that point, unless you have something else you want to say, Phil, we are going to wrap it up.
No, that's it for me.
Okay, so Phil, where can they reach you if they want to just complain about me talking too long and all the stupid fan theories I'm always tossing out there? Where should they go, Phil? Who should they commiserate with at their local internet watering hole?
Well, if you want to talk to me and ask me if Charlie Esther is an LMD, you can email me, nightwingpdp@gmail.com. On Twitter, I am at nightwingpdp. Most social media, it's at nightwingpdp.
Yes. Oh, and speaking of people being LMDs, I do hope we get Patton Oswalt back next season. I know maybe he's not an LMD, but this would be a pretty interesting thing to see Patton Oswalt facing the LMDs and saying, "No, I'm not an LMD. I'm an actual person." It would be cool, and I know that Patton had a rough year too. So many people have, and I do know why he was not more a part of this season. But I do hope that when he's ready that he comes back, because he has been at the light. He has been at the light to be a part of this show, and I do hope he comes back. And if you would like to write to me about whatever you'd like to talk to me about, say I'm wrong, say I'm right, say I am so close, but here's the real insane fan theory that you have, write to me at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. And of course, if you'd like to tweet along with me as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Incredible Hulk at 7 p.m. Eastern on MeTV, or Legends of Tomorrow, because I'm going to be starting to do a Podcast of Tomorrow podcast on our DC member feed here on the Southgate Media Network. Do so at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. And until then, connect with us again next week. Thanks for listening.